America could, if it wanted to, if it really wanted to apply its enormous fiscal and regulatory and financial pressure to customers of Russian oil, like China, like India, if they wanted to go down that route and accept the consequences of essentially starting a sort of trade war, sanctions war against the main customers of Russia's energy, China, Russia, and the EU, by the way, then if he wanted to do that, then actually he does have the power to cut Putin's war economy off at the knees. He really could. He really could inflict very serious damage to Putin's war economy. Putin is banking that he's not going to do that. That Trump's not going to do that. It's going to be too expensive for him, politically and economically. And he's also banking that. I believe that Putin thinks that he's kind of got the measure of Donald Trump. He thinks that what Trump is interested in is the bottom line, the big bucks, and all this stuff. And to be honest, maybe he's not wrong, because Trump has actually given us quite a lot of evidence to suggest that the big deal, and joint business projects with Russia is what he's interested in. And as recently as 20th of April, just 8 days ago, we had another lapidary all caps message from the Donald, where he said, let's get this deal done, so Ukraine and Russia can both do business with big business with the United States and make us all rich, hooray, all caps. So and I think but the question is, is Putin right about that? Is it true that that Big Donny is just interested in the cash, which is what the Kremlin clearly thinks? I don't. I perhaps Trump is not. Is actually not such an idiot as Putin believes him to be, and that his, as we also know, Trump is highly sensitive to personal slights. If he thinks that Putin is playing him for a fool, he could actually be as irrationally, turn into being as irrationally anti-Putin as he's been irrationally pro-Putin. And interestingly, actually, I think that's something that the Russians realize much better than the Americans or the Europeans, because I think the Europeans are sort of pretty much united in shock and horror and indignation and disgust of at Trump and at his going over apparently to the Russian side in these negotiations. But I think the Russians themselves are not nearly as complacent about their victory and about Trump being on their side as many Americans and Europeans are, because Russians have got a slightly longer memory and they remember Trump won. And although you have various sort of infantile, poorly informed commentators in the British press claiming that Trump is a sort of a Russian agent, he's worked for Putin, and there's clearly blackmail, all this sort of all this nonsense. Actually, people forget that Trump was much harsher on Putin than Obama ever was, by the way. It was actually Trump that sanctioned Nord Stream 2 pipeline. He didn't actually succeed in completely shutting it down, but it was Trump that sent lethal weaponry to Ukraine, and Obama did not. So actually, despite all those sort of famous atmospherics in Helsinki, Trump and Putin, and after the Helsinki meeting, famously in 2017, Trump appeared to believe in Putin's word over that of his own intelligence services. I mean, this is ancient news now, but the Russians remember that actually they thought that Trump was their guy, and Trump turned out not to be their guy.
And I want to come back to those comments we discussed briefly there about the comments from Russia's foreign minister Lavrov. Is this a kind of usual tactic that we see from the Russians, where someone in the Russian group, be that Dmitriev perhaps, who's dealing more with the Americans, will put forward an idea like Putin has today? Oh, we're going to do a ceasefire. and then you suddenly and quite quickly see someone else come forward, like Lavrov in this case, and go, oh, actually, we want to go back to our original demands. I mean, is that quite a regular thing that the Russians do, and are they willing to just rinse and repeat on that until they really do feel some pushback from Trump?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. That is the Russian strategy. It's a sort of scattergun approach, give with the left hand, take with the right hand, and essentially it's kind of it's of a piece with Putin's whole career, actually, which is that he's a sort of great tactician, but he's not a good strategist. And what he's always been really good at is sort of playing tactical situations for, for full advantage, and sort of he did that very successfully right up until his catastrophic miscalculation back in February of 2022, when I think he massively overreached. He launched a war that he Putin believed was basically a sort of massively aggravated putsch, a sort of regime change operation that he thought would take 3 days. Putin didn't launch this war thinking that it was going to take 3.5 plus years and claim 1 million casualties and so on. That was not the war that Putin wanted to fight. He went to war for the same reason that most dictators go to war, because he thought he could win it easily, and he was mistaken about that. And I think right now, the key debate is, does Putin want peace? But I think that's kind of perhaps the wrong question. Putin just wants to wants whatever he can get away with. Right now, rationally, you and I might think, looking at sort of what our understanding of Putin's hand to be, we would think, Vlad, bank the win. An amazing thing has, fate has just suddenly sort of dealt you a hand which includes the completely unexpected, wholehearted support of the United States, of the President of the United States. That's a fantastic moment to cash out. But the big problem is now, and just as it was back in 2022, is that we don't know what Putin knows. We don't know what information gets into his little information bubble. And what might seem rational to us is, we don't know what he's being told about his military capabilities. We don't know about what the actual situation is in his economy. There are actually lots of reasons for that an end to the war is actually quite a dangerous thing for him, because it means that he has to deal with the returning soldiers. He has gigantic spike in unemployment. He's a unpredictable ultra-nationalist, armed people. I mean, it's problematic to end the war, as well as problematic to continue fighting the war as well. But the real issue is, I think that he doesn't really have a strategy, except to try and get as much as possible out of his opponents and out of their and out of the discord between the United States and Europe as he possibly can. And to that end, indeed, his strategy and his tactics are basically to sort of try and sort of two-track good cop and bad cop at the same time.
And Lavrov also said in those comments, he's said that the ball's not in our court. Kiev needs to act first. He did mention that Kiev do have that moratorium on talks in place. I mean, is that just Russia trying to put the blame back on Ukraine, or should we actually watch out for that moratorium being lifted by Kiev as a sign that negotiations, direct talks between Russia and Kiev, could be imminent?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a crazy thing that Kiev literally passed a law, banning any negotiations with the Putin regime. I mean, it's kind of childish, actually. I mean, I can understand why they did it, but it's not really a serious political decision. It's like an emotional decision. It's a statement, and legislation should not really be driven by emotion. I think the more productive question is, what could possibly be a positive outcome of direct relation negotiations between Kiev and Moscow. I mean, that how is that going to work out? It's definitely not going to work out, because there's so much horror, there's so much hatred, there's so much passion. There is absolutely no way that any Kiev official interlocutor could possibly actually have a discussion that even entertain the kind of things that Russia is demanding. And among the things that Russia is demanding, by the way, is restrictions on the size of Ukraine's army, and what they describe as denazification, which is an easing of restrictions on Russian language rights and so on. Which is, in fact, by the way, the only point on which both the European Union and the Russian Federation agree, because the European Union also regards Ukraine's language laws as basically illegal and violating European norms on the rights of minority languages. But anyway, let's park that for a second. Maybe there will be eventually talks between Kiev and Moscow, but they're not going to get to peace, unfortunately. I think the best chance is for a deal to be done over the heads of the Ukrainians. And that sounds like a sort of really ugly thing. And it's definitely a violation of what the West and the Biden administration told and promised the Ukrainians, like there will be no deal without Ukrainian buy-in. But actually, with over the heads of the Ukrainians, but actually that's precisely what the Biden administration was planning to do too. So in that sense, actually, the sort of bare bones of the deal that Trump has been proposing, in other words, no NATO and de facto partition of Ukraine, that those two things will be the basis of a ceasefire have been kind of devastatingly obvious for a couple of years now. And that's also the deal that I think a Biden or Harris administration would have done just as much as Trump has done it. So that's not the shocking part. The shocking part is that the Trump administration has apparently backed like all the sort of the extra stuff, like sort of the formal judicial recognition of Crimea. I mean, that's really extraordinary, and the extraordinary spectacle of a U.S. administration essentially sort of doing the bidding of a authoritarian dictator or authoritarian leader to redraw an international boundary by right of conquest. That's pretty extraordinary that the United States should be backing that kind of thing. That's the surprising part. It's not the partition part. I mean, there are lots of examples in the history of the relatively modern history of the world. Korea being one of them, Cyprus being another, of countries being divided after conflict, but neither side actually recognizing the other, but nonetheless kind of sort of legal fictions being established, and sort of everyone gets on with their lives, and the killing stops. So, but that's not what Russia's asking for. Russia's not asking for a sort of fudge or compromise. According to Lavrov, at least, they're actually demanding full recognition of all the territory they occupy. And it's a massive over ask as well. I mean, it's a negotiating position, but who knows where they're going to get to. But if even the United States has no compellence strategy, or doesn't want to use anything, or doesn't want to do anything to actually compel Russia to sign, what hope is there for Ukraine having any compellent strategy?
Thank you for watching Frontline for Times Radio. For more on the war in Ukraine, you can sign up for membership at the link below or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to the latest news and analysis on Times Radio or read it on thetimes.com. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.